Please don't give this video a wide berth, as I saw the sign and it opened up my eyes. For those of you who just cringed at those puns, I think unfortunately it's just something I was born with. Though if it's any constellation, I usually cringe at them myself. In today's video, we search the cosmos and rank the birth signs of Oblivion Remastered from worst to best, measuring lesser and greater powers, attributes, and effects granted by each unique sign. But as usual, it's mostly just vibes and personal preference. If you find yourself star-crossed by the video, make sure to like and subscribe for more rankings. Now let's dust off a cliche pickup line and ask, what's your sign?
What's the matter? Getting tired?
Number 13, the Serpent. As someone born in the year of the snake, ranking the Serpent as the overall worst birth sign in Oblivion stings a little bit. As flavorful and badass as the Serpent sounds, and maybe aesthetically fits perfectly for a darker, edgier assassin or necromancer, it only grants a single greater power that can only be used once per day. While that in and of itself isn't uncommon amongst the birth signs, as we'll see, and might not have the longer term impact of say attribute bonuses, the power you get is extremely underwhelming, and despite the name, fails to scale well at all. The Serpent gives you the Serpent spell. They really got creative with that one. This power is essentially a poison and bodily cleanse all in one. It's a touch spell that deals 3 points of damage each second for 20 seconds, so 60 damage total. So it's not entirely useless. That damage is a little underwhelming to me, but for poison, if that's the buildup you want to go, it's one of the easiest damage types and statuses to inflict, as there are just tons of poisons to find, alchemically craft within the world of Oblivion if you so choose. I'm pretty sure poison is the most abundant alchemical effect across ingredients, and is extremely easy to apply to your weapons, so I find using an entire power just on poison lacks the bite I would like to see. However, this power also dispels any damaging effects on you, and cures poison at the same time. I'll be honest, I'm sure it's useful, but I consistently forget what can or can't be dispelled within Oblivion, as some apparent spells are actually minor powers used by enemies and vice versa. So I generally just forget to even try to dispel things. While curing poison can be nice, it's also something easily done through potions, or made completely useless depending on your race, looking at my beautiful scaly Argonian players here. So we have an underwhelming damage dealer and a situational, debatably useful curative. It's not terrible, right? Wrong. What I find constricting about this sign, and what causes my little hissy fit for the Serpent, is the fact that it drains your fatigue 100 points, which in combat can sometimes be extremely annoying and disruptive to your ability to, well, continue combat. While I don't think it's as devastating to lose your stamina as the original Oblivion, which completely nerfed your damage to like nothing if it went down, sort of trading your energy to transfer poison to the enemy sounds cool, but in practice, it's incredibly annoying to instantly see your stamina bar disappear, and sadly, the Serpent Stone fails to satisfy. Number 12, the Tower. Prepare for a towering failure of a birth sign, as the Tower is one of the most underwhelming and niche within the entire game, only barely scraping by the Serpent, as it doesn't actively harm you like that one does, though even the Serpent carries stronger role-playing flavor than the Tower does for me. The Tower has 2 greater powers, Tower Key and Tower Warden. Tower Key is a once per day free open lock that only opens 1 average lock, and while the power says only average, I find it works on very easy and easy locks as well, which does make sense, but whether or not that's a bug is sort of moot for me, as locks are already so easy to pick once figured out in game that having an entire power to do so that only works once a day is extremely pointless, as lockpicking once picked apart in Oblivion becomes fairly easy regardless of difficulty, and average is not really difficult at all anyway. Security or the skeleton key can easily make this power completely obsolete later in the game as well. Tower Warden is a little more interesting, though I'd argue almost nearly as useless. Activating it reflects a massive game-changing 5% of damage back to the attacker. Why not at least 10%? 5% is so measly that I'd be hard-pressed to even recognize when the power is active or not within combat. It's just a pitifully low amount that in my experience doesn't sway the battle one way or the other. The only small benefit here is that having Reflect Magic at level 1 does allow you to use that effect for spellcrafting, so if you really want to roleplay a Thorns-like reflective spellcaster, maybe you might consider the Tower, but for me, there's just such better options that I don't see myself locking this one down for a character. I still really struggle also from a role-playing perspective what this does for you, as its description and powers throughout the games seems to reinforce a more thief-like character who has a knack for finding and getting into places they shouldn't. But even then, there are much better birth signs for a thief, so the Tower fails to rise up to the challenge. Number 11, the Shadow. This one is beyond a shadow of a doubt completely and utterly mid. The birth sign of the Shadow, a very flavorful pick, seemingly perfect for the stealthiest of stealth archers, while cool and situationally useful, is one I rarely ever pick due to how easy it is to replicate through other more sustainable and reliable means. I'll give it props though, it has one of the cooler images for a sign with this mysterious hooded figure. The shadow provides you with a single greater power, that of the moon shadow, which grants you full invisibility for 60 seconds. As with almost all invisibility effects in Oblivion, this breaks if the player interacts with anything, attacks, casts spells, or really does anything more than just sneak or run around. Moon shadow can be cast while silenced though, which while nice is extremely situational, and really only useful if you become truly desperate. I find with stealth in Oblivion, I either don't bother with invisibility fully, or more reliably utilize it through various enchantments, scrolls, spells, and chameleon. Much like the tower, picking this sign will let you use the invisibility effect immediately for spellcrafting though, so I guess that's a nice bonus. I distinctly remember using the shadow on a Thieves Guild playthrough in Classic Oblivion and found it useful a handful of times during those quests, and invisibility in and of itself is a very powerful ability, but I find it's too limited by its once per day use, and really wish there was at least one more greater power or effect granted by this straightforward Birthsign. It's honestly not the worst by far, and I enjoy it more for role-playing than anything else, but overall I find it a little too bland and niche to rank higher than others on the list. Sorry for those that love it, but I had to throw some shade at the shadow. Number 10, the Lover. As badly as I may want to be a lover, not a fighter, in Oblivion, that just doesn't really work out too well in game. The sign of the Lover grants you a single greater power as well, the Lover's Kiss, basically giving you a much less effective version of Katana's classic fatality once per day. Though unfortunately, instead of blowing up the enemy, it merely paralyzes them for 10 seconds through the seduction of your loving touch. Paralyze can be extremely good, as you can imagine fully locking down an enemy and making them completely helpless to your whims, whatever those may be. 10 seconds is fairly long in combat, but I generally find the Lover to be extremely underwhelming, as it features an even harsher downside than the Serpent, in that it drains 120 points of stamina. So usually, unless I'm chugging restore fatigue potions, after I find I give the enemy a kiss and just kinda watch them lie there as we both recover slowly, not really allowing me to deal as much damage as I might like. I rank the Lover over the Serpent though because I think the effect is much better, even with the drawbacks. In one-on-one combat, the Lover's Kiss can sometimes guarantee your victory and can be a useful power for straight melee non-magical characters. Even still, the fatigue drain is just too punishing most of the time, and you either find you can't kill enemies quickly enough for it to be worth it, or have way better options as you level and get into the later half of the game. So overall, I find it to definitely be one of the weaker signs in Oblivion Remastered. But if you're role-playing as the lusty Argonian maid, you kinda just have to pick this one. Number 9, the Warrior. Next up, we have the default and straightforward Warrior sign. This is the classic go-to birth sign for anyone jumping into the game for the first time, and honestly, though it's on the lower half of my list, I think it's a fairly solid and safe option, though not quite as flavorful, interesting, or impactful as later birth signs. Unlike many of my previous picks, the Warrior does not grant a greater power, but instead fortifies or grants attribute bonuses in strength and endurance. Both of these are extremely good attributes, though it's debatable how useful something like strength is at the very early game, considering how it multiplies and scales off of various other factors like your weapon type and blade or skill with a blunt skills. If you have a standard blade skill and are using something simple like an iron sword, I think this only really adds like 1 to 2 points of damage to your attacks, not exactly something to write home about. I personally think endurance is always good though, if only to have increased carrying capacity to facilitate my loot goblin needs. And having 20 extra attribute points, or basically like almost 2 levels worth of attributes, while not insanely powerful, is solid. The Warrior is what it is. It's the basic human fighter of the birth signs. Default, vanilla, safe, yet still effective in its own way. I think many might rank it higher, but for me the Warrior doesn't quite strike as powerfully as I'd like at times, and even when I go straight up Warrior, even then it's not a sign that interests me from a character building or role-playing perspective. It's just kind of there. Number 8, the Lady. If you're feeling a little more fancy, however, you can always go with the Lady birth sign. This one doesn't grant any powers, but much like the Warrior, just simply permanently boosts some attributes for you. In this case, willpower and endurance by 10 points each. It's extremely similar to the Warrior, though more fitting for a magic-based combatant or spell sword than a pure brawler, which is really the only reason I rank it slightly higher than the Warrior. Attribute bonuses are always nice, but I'm finding as I'm exploring and discovering Oblivion Remastered still, that they don't really seem to be as impactful as Classic Oblivion, or OG Oblivion, or Oglivion. Where attribute gains and leveling were much more convoluted and difficult to min-max with. While willpower is primarily a magical attribute, being the main one for magic schools such as alteration, destruction, and restoration, it does have a fairly important physical impact as well, being used in the equation that determines your total fatigue. Considering that running out of fatigue or stamina is one of the largest challenges for a melee fighter, this birth sign can help a bit in negating your stamina loss overall. So yes, a very fitting and appropriate sign for any might and magic wielding spell sword type of playstyle, and I've personally picked the lady quite often on various characters due to its solid buffs it provides your character. All that being said, it's not exactly the most exciting pick, and much like the warrior, is just kind of there in the background without too much need for attention or thought. So a safe pick, but a good one nonetheless, that doesn't exactly inspire me to try different playstyles or builds based solely on the birth sign. Number 7, the Ritual. An extremely intriguing birth sign, the Ritual gets some bonus points for its uniqueness against other signs for me. While the name Ritual suggests a darker, more sinister vibe, the birth sign is actually anything but that, and for me a perfect character and role-playing option for your classic Holy Warrior or Cleric type of build, which, as I stated in my race and class videos, is a natural fit for the world and overall narrative of Oblivion. The Ritual grants a lesser power, meaning it can be used more than once per day at the cost of magicka like any other spell, called Blessed Word or Turn Undead, which, as it sounds, makes undead turn around and run away, causing them to flee for 30 seconds, which is quite a long time when you're being swarmed by them or facing whoever or whatever may have summoned them in the battle. Considering this can be used multiple times, if you have the mana, you can basically spam fear on any undead that might cross your path, which, while again situational and completely useless unless you're facing them, can also be extremely helpful. I've personally found it helpful against enemy conjurers who might summon a skeleton or zombie, as making their minion flee won't cause the summoner to just summon another one, like killing it outright might. So while not a game-breaking power, I honestly think it's a decent one to have in your arsenal and extremely flavorful. The second greater power is Mara's Gift, which, being greater, can only be used once per day. It instantly restores up to 200 points of your health. This can actually be absolutely clutch in those literal life or death moments, and I find I've used it quite a bit in the past as a oh shit panic button in combat. A free massive heal will never not be good, even if it's a bit limited in its usage. Overall, I find the Ritual a very strong birth sign from a role-playing perspective, even if its gameplay effects aren't as impactful as the next ones on my list. Number 6, the Steed. No more horsing around, it's time to talk about the Steed. For a long time, this was actually one of my go-to birth signs in both Oblivion and Morrowind, and I think it's always been an incredibly popular one among players for its simplicity. A younger me was intimidated and confused by the effects and powers of other options, so I just default to the Sonic gotta go fast mentality, and honestly I don't regret it. The Steed grants only a single passive buff, increasing your movement speed by 20 points. In a remastered world where sprinting is now a thing, there's an argument to be made that this birth sign maybe is not as nearly useful as it once was, and while there's probably some truth to that, even still, gotta go fast. I've seen people rank the Steed fairly low in other tier lists and rankings, and while I may understand their arguments, I personally find speed extremely helpful at all times and in all situations within Oblivion, from general movement, exploration, and combat. Athletics and acrobatics are some of the most fun skills within the game, and watching your progression from plodding adventurer to speed demon who can jump dozens of feet in a single bound is just way too much fun. And the Steed helps you push that even further, making you quickly become almost untouchable in combat. The Steed for me meshes nicely with a light armored melee or ranged combatant, or honestly even a magic user, as the ability to more quickly backpedal and dodge attacks should not be underestimated. The fact that this is a constant effect that positively impacts almost every facet of gameplay places the Steed higher than it might for others, though the option of an upcoming birth sign does make it a little redundant and in many ways just a worse version of that. Still, if you ever want to just hoof it, then you may have the need for Steed. Number 5, the Atronach. Undeniably one of the strangest and most unique birth signs within the game, the Atronach is really awesome in that it completely changes your entire playthrough, creating a unique yet challenging twist on the standard resource management within Oblivion. The Atronach gives you a massive 150 point increase to magicka and a 50% chance to absorb spells that then restore your magicka, which you'll need because the trade-off here is that you can't regenerate any of it naturally. This is a very interesting trade-off, as you are granting yourself magical protection, massively expanding your mana pool, but completely stunting any ability to regain mana outside of enchantments, potions, or other effects. I know there are some very strong opinions about the Atronach out there and a variety of ways to make up for your lack of mana regen, negating the debuff while still enjoying the massive buff for magic users it represents, which is why I have it this high on the list in addition to its extremely unique gameplay. But for me personally, I rarely choose the Atronach, as I find the complete lack of mana regeneration way too frustrating even if you offset it. It just adds a level of tedium to the gameplay that I don't want to deal with and don't really enjoy, even if eventually you can create some pretty insane builds using this, especially as, say, a high elf who naturally has a very large magic pool to begin with. If you have the stones for it, I think the Atronach can provide you with one of the most unique playstyles and gameplay options among all the birth signs, but for me personally, it doesn't quite rock as hard as the next few might. Number 4, the Mage. Coming from the very unique and powerful Atronach to the extremely simple Mage might be disappointing, but hey, that's that's what I'm here for. The mage is the warrior of magical birth signs, if that makes sense, granting only a single effect, a passive increase to your magicka by 50 points. Balanced and risk-free, the mage in regards to our more magical inclined birth signs presents no downsides or negative effects, and is about as straightforward a birth sign as you could ever want. And for me, sometimes that's enough. When I want to be a magic user without any of the nuances or thought of other birth signs, the mage is just an incredibly solid and useful go-to in almost any scenario, character, or magic-focused playstyle. What it may lack in complexity, it makes up for in sheer convenience, as it may just to be a simple and straightforward buff that's useful in almost any situation. Honestly, it's so simple I don't even know how much more I have to say about the mage, but I guess Number 3, the Apprentice. Safe and simple are all well and good, but sometimes you just need to ride the lightning. Enter the Apprentice, our last magical focused birth sign on the list. This one is one of my favorites when I want to go full blaster caster and risk it all. The Apprentice provides 2 effects, one positive and one negative. It grants the character a permanent 100 point increase to their magicka, double that of the mage but still less than the Atronach. In return you take 100% increase to any magical damage, essentially doubling any spell effect that might hit you. Here is your perfect glass cannon birth sign, and I kinda love it for that. I find the Apprentice very fun to use as it gives you a massive magicka pool off the bat, but doesn't have the annoying, stunted, tedious regeneration of the Atronach, and still presents some unique challenges of its own. Though I'm not sure I'd recommend the Apprentice sign for any Altmer mage character. It seems like a natural fit and it can be kind of fun to have so much mana, but at the same time their innate weakness to magic means you'll get absolutely obliterated by enemy casters without much chance to fight back. Breton might also seem like a natural counter with their innate magical resistance, and while that's not terrible, if you want to be more optimized, it might actually make more sense to go Altmer with the mage sign instead. Regardless, I like going Breton for Apprentice birth sign characters. I think it's very fun and flavorful to have so much magic, and presents some interesting backstory or role-playing options as you imagine different scenarios for why your character is so sensitive to magic in general. Speaking of which, I should note that 100% weakness to magic includes alteration and restoration spells as well, so healing and buffing is also much more potent for yourself, which adds another dynamic layer to rolling with this birth sign. Overall, this is by far my favorite of the magical focused birth signs, as I find the increased magicka extremely useful, and dealing with increased magical weakness an interesting challenge to overcome. Number 2, the Thief. Now allow the sign of the Thief to steal your heart if it hasn't already, as it's my favorite birth sign for any character that's not a straight up warrior or full on mage. But despite its name, don't feel like this one only applies to Thief characters, as it's in my opinion one of the best overall attribute focused birth signs within Oblivion Remastered. The Thief gives you 3 attribute bonuses with agility, speed, and luck at a permanent 10 point increase. Agility, while beneficial for ranged characters in particular, is handy for really anybody, as well as it also determines your maximum fatigue and reduces your chances to be staggered or stunned by enemy power or regular attacks, making you just that much more stable on your feet. I've touched on speed, so I won't dwell too much here, but it's in my opinion a good stat for any type of character or build, so having a small speed boost never hurts, and with it only being half of what the steed provides and these additional buffs, I kind of see it making that one a bit redundant like I said earlier. Where the Thief shines though is in its fortification of your luck stat, which remains one of the more enigmatic within the game for most players. I'll be honest, I still don't fully understand everything that luck influences, but I just know that it affects essentially everything that you do in some way, impacting every single stat and attribute outside of acrobatics, athletics, and speechcraft with a specific formula. The Thief's plus 10 to your luck puts the starting value of this attribute over 50, where it starts to increase all other skills by an additional 40%. So needless to say, being lucky is pretty handy in almost every situation. It also increases your chances to win when gambling in the arena, so that's an awesome bonus too. With the changes to stat gain and leveling, luck isn't quite as difficult a choice as it once was when leveling, but it still levels more slowly than any other attribute in the game, so having a plus 10 right off the bat can be a large advantage. Overall, I find the flavor, role-playing, and attribute bonuses of the Thief all extremely good and helpful. And if I'm going pure stats, it's one of my preferred birth signs if I want to get lucky. Number 1, the Lord. Oh Lord, he comin'. The Lord is the biggest changed up birth sign from the original to the remaster, going from a minor healing skill and fire weakness to frankly the best and most powerful birth sign within the entire game. The Lord now grants a permanent 15% increased resistance to all magic types and a plus 15 to your armor rating. While I don't want to get bogged down in the math here, needless to say these are absurdly good buffs from just your birth sign. To be honest, the signs in general to me have always been more flavor than anything, maybe granting you a small boost here or there, but the reworked Lord that makes your character extremely tough right out of the gate. Plus 15 to your armor rating is essentially like wearing another piece of armor completely, or more importantly, allows you to roll around in armor without the need of a helmet, so the world can see you in all your beautiful glory. Considering how low your armor is within the early game, this can easily double your armor rating right out of the sewer gate, and it actually scales pretty well from there. While the 15% magic resist I think is just nice on any type of character or build, using it on a Breton with their innate 50% resistance, you can kick off the game with a massive, insanely powerful 65% magic resist passively. Throw on a simple magic resist ring or enchantment and you can reach 100% magic resist even easier than ever. Frankly, that makes this in my opinion the best Birthsign within the entire remaster, and is such a buff to the rework that I'm honestly surprised it doesn't have some type of trade-off like a reduction in another attribute or weakness in general. Rolling out of the sewers as a heavily armored Breton with the Sign of the Lord almost feels like a cheat code in my testing so far, in that you are nigh unkillable by magic. So just pick it and lord over your enemies all day. And there we have it, every Birthsign in Oblivion Remastered subjectively ranked. Let me know your favorite in the comments or what you would change about the list. I hope you enjoyed this one, as I've had a lot of fun with Oblivion Remastered and making ranking lists for it lately, so make sure to subscribe if you liked the video and want more of these, and I'll see you next time.